The Major Spoilers podcast covers news, reviews, and of course spoilers, and goes into details about the topics discussed. So if you haven't read, listened, or watched the items we talk about, you might want to come back later.
I'm Matthew.
And I'm Steven, and you're listening to the Major Spoilers podcast, the podcast for pop culture and comic fans.
In this issue, they're coming to get you, Barbara. And by they, I mean the dead folks of one specific county of Wisconsin, which is less scary, but still a creep fest. Also, Johnny and Haji find intrigues in the streets of Tokyo. Steven needs your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. He'd also like one of those little Debbie oatmeal cream pies. It's an old school revival, so pass the lard and praise the ammunition. Yes, living in today's complex world of the future is a little like having bees in your head. But there they are, because the Major Spoilers podcast is on the air.
Welcome to issue 1096 of the Major Spoilers podcast. Thank you for downloading and checking us out this week. Rodrigo out with a bit of a migraine. He's talked about his migraine stories before. This one seems pretty bad, and we hope he recovers very soon. Also, I want to thank everybody who sent all of the kind words last week after our interview with the lawyer and Dr. Peter Coogan. Technically, the lawyer's also a doctor because he has a JD, but he probably doesn't flaunt it around like some lawyers I know.
He just calls himself JD.
Yeah. We had that discussion last week about the superhero trademark being struck down. And everybody really liked that because we got the story from the horse's mouth and not through interpretations and readings of the court filing case. So that was a lot of fun. And I really want to thank Dr. Peter Coogan for getting all of that set up for us. And maybe we'll have more of Dr. Coogan in the near future. Later in the show, we are going to be talking about Revival, a series about, as Matthew said, dead people coming back to life. And if you've ever been to Wisconsin, it's very much... It's dead back to life.
Very hard to tell which is which.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But first,
we love you, Wisconsin.
Yeah, no, my nieces and nephews and in-laws live in Wisconsin. So I love Wisconsin. As Frank Lloyd Wright would say, "Oh, Wisconsin, my Wisconsin, I love thee." And Wisconsin is a beautiful place. If I could pick anywhere to live, I would pick Wisconsin in the spring. Well, more like the summer and the fall, not the winter and the spring. I would avoid Wisconsin at all costs.
Anyone from Wisconsin would say.
Jonathan, who writes reviews on our site, he lives in Wisconsin. Yes. I'm not doxing him because it's the entire state. And what's her name? Now I'm Ingrid. Ingrid also. She hasn't written for us for a long time, but she's also from Wisconsin. So Wisconsin represent. Also representing us this week are some reviews. Out this week, we have two brand new books, both from Dynamite Entertainment. Matthew, why don't you start us off with the new installment of Jonny Quest? And I will say one thing.
Yes.
I was really hoping for something different with this new Jonny Quest series, and I was disappointed to see that they pulled a Doc Savage, a DC Comics Doc Savage of the 1980s.
Well, they kind of did, and they kind of didn't. Here's the deal. We're 3 months in, so it's not a spoiler. In the first issue, Johnny, Haji, Bandit, Race, and Benton were testing a quantum device which shot them forward in time 65 years. So they think, or they came from the year 1964, where Jonny Quest is from.
Yeah,
and they are stuck in the year 2024. And the things that we know about the year 2024 are thus. Benton, obviously dead. Race, obviously dead. Haji, not speaking to Johnny. Johnny, 72 years old. And some sort of strange bearded person who lives in a cave. So, in the last issue.
I'm not a big fan of taking classic characters and trying to update them for the modern time.
But they didn't update them. They sent them forward in time. I don't even know. We have no way of proving that they're not going to go back to 1964.
I mean, hopefully they do, but...
Remember, the DC Doc Savage was actually Clark Savage's son.
Yes. In a stupid twist. In a stupid twist.
That was not...
It was a stupid twist. Anyway.
It was a perfectly valid attempt to do something new with a property.
Hey, the Kubert art was fantastic. I'll just say that.
It was. There were chunks of that stuff, and they brought back John Sunlight and had a pretty solid issue where he teamed up with the Shadow. But here's the deal. None of that has anything to do with Jonny Quest. Because Benton's device was handcrafted in 1964, Johnny does not have the stuff on site to try and repair it. However, Johnny still has all of the money that he got from his dad's technology, and so they have flown to Japan, where someone does in fact have the technology to craft the device. So while Race and Benton are trying to figure that out, Johnny and Haji, as usual, get up to shenanigans. And a strange young woman shows up and steals the new prototype things that they've made and runs away. And no one knows how they even knew that he was there.
Oh, wow. What was the bad guy's name? Dr. Singh?
Dr. Zinn.
Zinn. Yeah, I have a feeling it's a descendant of Dr. Zinn.
Oh, you have no idea. They actually get to the point where the ninjas attack, and it turns out that not only is it Dr. Zinn, but the girl that he hired to steal the stuff didn't know she was working for Dr. Zinn and hates Dr. Zinn.
Because he killed her parents.
Her grandmother taught her not to trust Dr. Zinn. And Johnny and Haji see her face and immediately go, she looks exactly like Jezebel Jade.
Uh-oh.
So, you remember Jezebel Jade?
Yeah, of course.
The former lover of Race Bannon.
Yeah.
I think this is Race's granddaughter. But here's the thing.
I mean, it could be.
All of that goes floop-de-doop.
She got white hair?
They come looking now. Jezebel Jade had black hair.
No, I'm saying it's that way you know it's not her. It's not his kid.
No, she's Asian.
I know, but she could still have white hair.
Well, I suppose she could. So, can I go on? Okay.
I guess. I don't know. I was disappointed when I heard, they're in the year 2024, and I was just like, I'm out.
You haven't even read it. How can you? Okay, so here's the thing. The very important thing you need to know. Does involve Dr. Zinn. However, Dr. Zinn would be 135 years old. And if he were still alive, he would probably be like submerged in a tank somewhere using a hologram to communicate with people because he's an arrogant man. But the issue ends. This is issue 3. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Johnny isn't ongoing.
I think it's a 6 issue for now.
Is it 6? All right. So this would be the halfway point. We end with Johnny and Haji and Jezebel Jade's granddaughter, with an asterisk in case I'm wrong, in the clutches of Dr. Zinn's evil folk, while Race and Dr. Quest have to figure something out. So here's the thing you need to know about Jonny Quest, issues 1, 2, and 3.
Okay.
Loved issue 1. Really enjoyed issue 2. Enjoyed issue 3. I'm going to give it 3.5 slices of meatloaf. The art in this issue, quite good. And
is it the same artist who's doing the cover, the main cover?
No.
Okay.
No, the covers are by different people.
Okay.
But the interiors by Sebastian Piriz are really good. And they managed to give us a realistic setting while maintaining the original. There's some cartooniness to those the animation designs.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that Bandit still looks like Bandit. Race still looks like Race. In issue 1, Race started yelling and shooting at people, and I swear I heard Mike Rhodes' voice in my head. So it's very accurate.
Yeah.
But, as you said, it's one of those things where if it bugs you that they're operating in the modern day, here's the thing you need to know. They're trying to get back home to 1964. Yeah. And in theory, I can think of about 4 different ways that they could do this and have it still be 1964 cool adventures with this modern edge to it. I know people who complain about Joe Casey as a writer. Casey does have a thing with his dialogue on occasion that makes it sound like we're looking at 3 or 4 Joe Caseys yelling at each other.
Yeah.
Not so much of an issue here. There is a problem with people not asking follow-up questions, which infuriates me in these situations because somebody's like, what happened between you and Haji? And Johnny's like, something very serious. And then, but
I guess,
3.5 slices of meatloaf for Jonny Quest #3. I enjoyed it. It's not as good as #1, but it is a better than average comic book. And third issues always do have that kind of, we're at the middle. Are we going to get there? Is this going to work?
Yeah, I guess this is an ongoing. I just looked. It is an ongoing series. I would have liked them to have gone to any other year but 2024. Have them go to 2064. Have them go to, and Johnny's 100 years old or whatever. 20, it wouldn't be 64. It'd probably be like 44. But have them go, not to modern day. And then, of course, I always have issues, and maybe Casey, it sounds like maybe he's addressed it here, is when you take an adventure series like Jonny Quest, which was trying to be futuristic, but has now become anachronistic, or retro-futuristic, I guess is what it is. For some reason, that doesn't align with the modern style or aesthetic. And so my guess is none of that retro-futuristic tech has come forward with them beyond their quantum device.
They do have their flying belts. So they
have a flying platform. Any giant spiders with robot eyes?
They don't have any giants. All the giant spiders with eyes are now actually teeny tiny because technology gets smaller.
Yeah.
So they're like little nano walking eyes, which I felt was a fun little twist.
I don't know. I might check it out, but I just, like I said, the minute that I was like, they Doc Savage this thing, I was like, I'm not really interested. So, but Matthew says 3.5 slices. Go check it out. And if you want to, you can listen. Don't take my word for it. Don't take Matthew's word for it. Go and check out these comics for yourself. There's a link in the show notes where you can go and buy these comics through our Amazon affiliate link. And hey, that kicks like 5 cents back our way for every comic that you buy. So if you're someone who goes and buys 100 comics during the week, hey, guess what? We get $5. And that is enough for us to go out and buy Terminator 1 from Dynamite Entertainment, out this week from Declan Shalvey and Luke Sparrow. Here's the thing. This was something that I wasn't expecting as far as Terminator series goes. I either thought this was going to be taking place in the future, like Terminator stories do, or that it was going to be another, hey, it's the 1980s, and the Terminator has arrived to take out Sarah Connor, and this was going to be a Sarah Connor story. And maybe it still is. I have no idea, because this story takes place in the year 2018 in the great land of Alaska, where we are met with two elderly couple who are just living off the grid, and the old man is just, trying to live his life, and he's talking about how, they're surprised that they're able to live here in Alaska after all of the nuclear bombs that dropped. And so you're like, oh, this is after Skynet became active and killed everybody. And then all of a sudden a Terminator shows up out of nowhere, and it's all ganky and yucky looking. And the guy's like, oh, or Martha, or whatever the girl's name is. We'll say Ingrid, since we used Ingrid anyway. Run, Ingrid, and go burn the pile of stuff. And he gets back to the house, and, he's trying to blow up the Terminator, and we find out it's a T-800 model. And both of the people die. And then we flash back to the 1970s, where these two are trying to escape. So imagine like you just watched the Terminator movie, but instead of the 80s, it's the 70s. And instead of Sarah Connor, it's like two other randos that are also trying to get away from the Terminator and think they've stopped it. And so they think the only thing they can do is, and they don't even know it's a machine. They just know it's some psychopath that's out to kill them. And they try to fly off to Alaska, and the Terminator latches itself to the side of a plane as they're taking off. And the old man, or he was a young man at the time, is able to shake it off, and it goes falling into the water below, and they think that they've gotten rid of it. But the Terminators are always active, and they're always tracking. And it took from the 1970s to 2018 for the Terminator to finally track them down. And it's not the two of them that the Terminator is probably tracking. It is probably their kid that they had in Alaska while they were hiding out off grid for all these years. It turned out to be a fascinating story, because it played with the tropes of what we know of a Terminator story to be about. It's a nonstop killing machine. It's always going to find you. It's always going to come after you. The thing that makes this really interesting is we don't know who these people are. There's barely any backstory given to these two characters, and they're dead in the first issue. And then we run into this thing of, well, who is the Terminator really tracking? And from there, I mean, it's just like, where's the story going next? It made me want to go, okay, I'm intrigued. You have given me something that is enough of what we know about Terminator, but you've done it in a way that has nothing to do with Sarah or John Connor or Doctor Who. And I was just like, this is amazing. And so I'm down on this. I really thought that this was going... Now, again, nothing against Dark Horse Comics, because I really enjoyed the Terminator stuff that they were doing back in the day. But I thought that this Dynamite series was going to be more of the same. And in a sense it is, but it isn't, if that makes sense. The art is pretty cool by Luke Sparrow. I think when the Terminator finally gets its skin blown off and we see the machine underneath, he draws a Terminator just like a T-800 should be. There are gory parts, but it's Terminator gory parts, with skin and stuff hanging off. All the other stuff is pretty toned down. And so I enjoyed this. I really like this book a lot. I thought for a first issue, Terminator #1 from Dynamite Entertainment really kind of hit it out of the park. I'm going to give it 4.5 slices of meatloaf out of 5. If your Terminator whistle hasn't been wet in a while, now's the time to go wet your whistle and check out Terminator 1. It's out this week. And again, you can buy it from that Amazon affiliate link because, if you go out and buy Terminator #1 and Jonny Quest #3, I will then have 2 nickels that I can rub together and maybe make some sparks fly on next week's episode of the Major Spoilers podcast. Who knows?
Yeah, nickel doesn't spark.
Well, the nickels that Amazon sent us certainly do. I'm not sure they're actually made out of nickel.
Well,
I think they're made out of wood and flint.
Well, nickels are mostly made out of copper, I believe.
Yeah, probably. I don't know. Anyway.
Does copper spark? No, I don't even know.
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it's inert unless you run electricity through it. Then it'll spark all over the place.
Hey, nerds are our bread and butter. Don't call it a nerd.
No, I said inert. It means it doesn't do anything. Kind of like you on any other day besides Tuesday and Wednesday when we're recording.
I will slap you. I got up this morning at 6:45 a.m.
You walked right into that. Anyway. Hey,
I went into my office. 4 inches from my bed. What should we do?
We should thank all of our supporters who support this show and all the nonsense that we do at the Major Spoilers Podcast Network, whether it is top 5 this week, top 5 snacks to bring to game night. Ooh, you're going to want to listen to that. Or if we're doing something with Legion Clubhouse or we're doing Critical Hit or whatever it is, we couldn't do it without the support of our fine patrons from around the world. This week, we're sending our thanks and our best wishes out to the Great Nate O. The Great Nate O increased their membership last week. And we just wanted to give a shout out to the Great Nate O, who's from Florida. And of course, we want Nate and everybody from Florida and Georgia and all up along the East Coast. We hope that you are all well and safe, especially with this next hurricane about to bear down upon you. We hope that you are all safe from the storms. But definitely thank you, the Great Nate O. He did let us know after Helene passed that he was fine. His home and everything were fine. And he was up working in some of the other states impacted by the hurricane to get their computer networks back up and running. So there you go. Listen, nice. If you are now, Nate is like at the upper echelon. He hasn't hit Daddy Warbucks level yet. I mean, he may in the future, which would be great. But in the meantime, he is in the upper echelon. He is in the rarefied air of our patrons. But we do have so many more patrons who are at the silver level. That's $5 a month. And at the $5 a month, you get 4 bonus episodes each month. This week, Matthew and I talked about Dude, Where's My Car? And you'll want to listen to that fascinating conversation. It's almost as fascinating as the movie. Yeah. So you get 4 bonus episodes each month, plus you get Critical Hit a week early. If you want to go up to the $10 a month level, the gold level, you get up to 8 bonus episodes each month. Plus you get an inside look of what it's like to run Major Spoilers with the Major Spoilers VIP live chat. What other companies are pulling back the curtain like that? Very few, and most of them are doing it over on Patreon, and that's where you want to go to, patreon.com/Major Spoilers. We want to give you a shout out next week, so what you waiting for? All right, everybody, it is time for our trade paperback discussion this week. It's Revival from Image Comics, written by Tim Seeley with art by Mike Norton and Mark Englert. This is a story where the dead have come back to life in a small region of Wisconsin. And so the area has been blocked off, nobody in, nobody out. and the CDC is there, and the police officers, specifically Dana Cypress, are trying to figure out what's going on with these people who are acting normal, who have been returned from the dead but are acting normal, and what's causing it, and is it going to spread, and why isn't it not everybody who dies come back to life? It's only the people who came back on Revival Day or the Undead Day. And maybe these people who have come back are maybe not quite right.
Maybe they're not human at all.
They may not be human at all, because there is some kind of ghost or baby, ghost parent or baby ghost running around in the woods at one point that's kind of creepy.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of unexplained questions within this 5-issue arc, which is perfectly fine. I mean, I think Revival is pushing 50 issues now.
Oh, is it really? Okay.
But yeah, I read, possibly reviewed Revival number 1.
Yeah, I think we either reviewed it on Dueling Review or we did it on this podcast. Just because so many people were interested in this Tim Seeley project.
I do remember reading issue number 1 and being very confounded, for lack of a better word, by it. But I do like the fact that as this particular story goes on, it becomes very personal, because at the if you read the solicitation, it's like a mysterious murder investigation. Mm-hmm. That's not really the primary plot. That's kind of the underlying tension, because it's referring to the fact that at the end of the first issue, Dana finds out that her sister is one of the revivalists. And so, we have this moment where she's stabbed right through the heart with a scythe. And then it's like, don't tell Dad, whatever you do.
Yeah, Dad's like the sheriff of the county. Also, the murder investigation is Dana having to figure out who killed her sister in the first place. And it may be the college professor. Who knows? A lot of questions are brought up in this, and there are not a lot of answers
addressed. Yeah.
And that's my biggest frustration.
There's a local guy who's apparently like Jack LaLanne / I don't know, Don Juan type, who keeps popping up, and they're like, well, I don't eat meat, but I thought I might try and sleep in somebody else's bed. I'm like, what?
Oh, yeah. There's that guy, the crazy old horny coot. And then there's a guy who thinks he's been sent by God to exorcise demons from people, and he's off his rocker. And then there's a little old lady who may have an idea of what's going on, but she is murdered, and a reporter is trying to follow that track.
There's a lot going on here. And I will say one thing that does kind of get me in about issue 3 or so. And on the one hand, I'm like, I really do appreciate a lot of the art. I feel like looking at this, it feels, very, very, not necessarily mundane, but it feels real world. Mm-hmm. There are bits and pieces where I look at some of the facial structures and I think Barry Kitson, who I absolutely love.
Oh, I was going to say, is it the Luna Brothers, the ones that did, I think that's
I can see that. Yeah. They did The Sword, and they did Ultra. I can see that. There's kind of a similar tone, but the thing that comes up in issue 3 is that we're following M, the younger sister, and Dana, the older sister, and most of the things throughout the first issue that that allowed us to tell them apart are a police uniform and a particular hoodie. So we actually have a sequence where Dana has gone out. She's not in uniform. She's, drinking and looking for someone to spend time with. And I'm just like, is this M? Wait, what? Yeah. And there are several points where you have characters with, granted, they're sisters, facial similarity makes perfect sense. Don't get me wrong, but it is difficult to tell who is who in certain parts of the issues. And it's a little bit of a bummer to me that the story doesn't give us more clear cues right up front. You know what I mean? Like at the point where Jim Shooter always said, when somebody walks on screen, you should have someone say, hello, the captain.
Right.
And I don't necessarily feel like that, but I want something.
Well, you said this is now pushing issue 50 or something, and maybe that's great, but for first trade, I really kind of wanted something a little bit more. I needed a resolution of one of the stories that are introduced, right? I needed something to make me go, yes, everybody is safe now, but now there's something worse on the horizon, or this mystery has only gotten deeper, and that's why they're the revivalists, or whatever it is. I just needed something at the end of this to really say, you've got a complete story. Now you want to know the rest of these questions that have gone unanswered. Now you need to pick up volume 2. This one just feels like...
It just feels like it ends.
Yeah. So if this were a TV series, which it wouldn't surprise me if this became a TV series at some point, this would be the 2-hour pilot premiere. They don't do those anymore. But back in the day, if you had a premiere of a new TV show, they'd probably do it as a 2-hour premiere to really get you hyped up and spend your time being invested with these characters, etc. That's what this feels like. But it does so without a satisfying resolution. I'm not saying that this is a bad book, because I was very interested in seeing where these characters were going, how the revival of these dead people were impacting the community. And the community doesn't seem too freaked out about it, except that they can't leave the county because of the lockdown. I don't know. It's a weird book. It's a little bit thriller. It's a little bit
country. It's a little bit rock and roll.
Yes, it's a little bit rock and roll. It's got a little scary bits in it, but it's not like the supernatural is the front and center bit. It's a weird like crime thriller.
It's got kind of an X-Files vibe, but like more X-Files the comic book.
Yeah.
And I stand corrected. They're not pushing 50. They went 47 issues.
Oh, okay.
It looks like Revival as a series is complete. So the last issue that I ran into is apparently the last issue, and I didn't realize it came out 7 years ago.
Oh my! Well, I mean, this series started, I believe, in 2012. So and that's over a decade ago now. So.
And that is, that's one of the things that this does well. I feel like the first issue really does kind of raise a lot of questions and confound the reader. And it does so in a way that wasn't successful for me in 2012, but isn't necessarily bad. I feel like the first issue is the strongest part of this particular trade, although I still don't know what's going on with the Zorse, which is apparently a hybrid zebra horse.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense either, but whatever. It's a silly plot point.
That's another thing. It feels like there's a lot of red herrings. There are bits in here where one guy says that's a demon, and then there's a thing with a Zorse, and then there's I do believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe that Tim Seeley himself is from Wisconsin.
Probably.
Because Local Man, which is another book that he writes, it's very personal, is another book that is set in Wisconsin, in rural Wisconsin. And I love Local Man to death, and I feel like there are echoes in Local Man of what we see here in Revival, kind of with a superhero tinge. And I am glad that they are separate. I'm glad that, you have the 50,000 issues or whatever, 47 issues of Revival. I kind of now, knowing that it has that finite ending, I want to see if the other collections are as oddly spaced as this one.
So that, maybe that's my biggest problem is I'm glad that it's a finite series. Rank a little bit better for me, or especially if it's a collected arc that has a complete story from beginning to end. I like that. Yeah. I would like to see what Volume 2 has to offer, because I'm wondering if maybe they should have packaged Volume 1 and Volume 2 together to get a more complete story, or at least entice us a little bit more. I understand, especially if you're a publisher like Image or Boom or Dynamite or some of these others, where, we did Dark Ride. And Dark Ride had some cliffhanger endings where it's like, oh no, I've got to read the next volume of this to find out what's going on. I mean, that's the reason why we did all 3 volumes of Dark Ride, is because each one had something that led us up to a point where We have to know what's happening next. This one leads us up to a point, and I'm kind of just like, it's interesting, but not rush right out in a buying frenzy interesting. It's almost like when I first started reading The Walking Dead, where at the beginning of The Walking Dead, yes, the end of the first trade, you're like, I've got to read the second trade. And then you got to the end of the second trade, and I think, what is it? The third one is the prison one, or is it the second one, the prison story? I forget which.
I think the third one is the prison.
Yeah.
So, the third one or the third and the fourth.
Yeah. So by the time they're done with that prison story, I was kind of like, I kind of know what's going on. I'm not really interested in reading this further. That's kind of how I felt like with reading volume 1 of Revival. It's got a lot of really cool elements in it. It's got a lot of really cool plot points in it. I think all of the characters, and there is a large cast of characters that, even though there's probably only 4 or 5 that are main characters, there are like these crazy neighbors that are, the Zorse neighbor and the owners of the Zorse. They're characters that are recurring. There's a lot of recurring characters in this that I think probably have stories that expand, just like in The Walking Dead, where you had characters who appeared as side characters who became central characters and then died. I'm sure that is stuff that goes on in Revival, but there just wasn't enough to grab a hold of me and shake me and say, you got to read this. And I followed Tim Seeley since he first started working in comics. And we used to talk about his stuff all the time. I like his stuff. I like Mike Norton's art. I think his art is really cool as well. I just needed something more. Maybe it's 1 more issue's worth of more in this trade, or, 10 issues, but I realize you've got to make your money. So you package, 4 or 5 issues together and, hey, that's your trade. Now go buy the other trade.
Right. And we always joke about how we go 6 issues for the trade, but this 5 issues, I feel like, and again, I do not know anything about the workings of, Image Comics or the workings of Tim Seeley's production company, but I feel like the 5 issues was kind of a random cutoff to give us maybe a better price point, because issue 5 literally ends with a to be continued, which, again, that's fine, but it is frustrating, that break point. And it's a point where we're actually seeing the first real movement in the quote unquote murder mystery starting to pop up in issue 5. So when we do get that, and then it's just like, and join us next time.
Yeah.
That I feel like that's not a fault of the creators. That's a fault of the packaging, which, it is Image. So the packaging comes from the creators, but even so, that's not the book's fault. It's not something that I'm going to hold against it. But it does affect my appreciation of it, and it makes it feel a little less cohesive than I would like. And I also do want my own Admiral Peppercorn action figure, because he's like,
I know, right?
He's red.
So this is actually a pretty good deal. It's 5 issues and the free Comic Book Day short story in here, which I'm not even going to count. We're just going to say 5 issues. Full price, $12.99 for the cover price. That's $260 per issue, which by today's standards, that's a steal. I don't remember in 2012 what the cover price was, either $2.99 or $3.99 back then. But that's a pretty good bargain for for this trade. Let's see. There is a deluxe collection, which we probably should have read, called Volume 1. That one is $20, and that one includes issues 1 through 11. So the next trade actually has 1 more issue than this one, and I bet that's more of a complete story in that.
I wonder.
Yeah.
I wonder if it is. I wonder if we get to a point where issue 6 opens a whole new arc. Maybe does something,
or really concludes this arc. But that's my biggest thing is, if you are going into Revival thinking that you're going to get a complete story, you're not. You're going to get a really good tease. You're getting a really good pilot episode. You're getting really good introduction to this world and some of the craziness that's going on. A lot of questions are brought up, but they're not all answered. I think Tim Seeley is a solid writer. I think Mike Norton is a solid artist. I just am frustrated where this breakpoint was. And that's maybe kind of a good thing right there. So for me, I'm saying this is definitely a check it out. This is definitely, if you see it in the library, pick it up. But as I said a moment ago, I don't think that this is a rush right out in a buying frenzy book. What say you, Matthew, for final thoughts?
Definitely agree. There's a lot to love here, and I feel like there's the beginning of some really interesting sibling stuff going on between Dana and M.
Yeah.
I feel like if we get to issue 47 and, the whole emotional core of the book is not just whatever happens to Emily or, whatever is about the revival is kind of the setup for Emily and Dana coming to terms with their life and the horrific things that have happened to them, I would be absolutely surprised. I'd say this is definitely a read it from me. You should check it out because it has things that other comics don't. Just know that the breaking point is bad. It does have a Zord.
Yeah.
A Zord.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. That is Revival Volume 1. You're Among Friends. It's ironically, it's nothing like the Friends TV show, but it's still
you'll be dead for me too.
That's where we're going to end it. Thank you so much for listening. If you found value in this show, we would love to have you join us on our Patreon, where you will find even more fun, including the Major Spoilers podcast pre-show, where again we talk about, dude, where's my car? And surprisingly, I asked Matthew to read the tattoo on my back, and it says dude. And then he asked me to read the tattoo on his back, and I said, no, I'll pass. But you can find out all of that at Patreon.
It's really sad because the one on the back says F you, Steve.
So remember, until next time, we know that you love comics. We do too. We will talk with you soon. Oh, by the way, we are actually off next week because of soccer games. But you guys already know that because you're patrons and all that cool stuff.
Right.
Bye now.
If I had the X-ray vision of a Superman, I could save a few bucks and stand around and read through the covers of the comics on the stand. But although every other page would be backwards, I suppose I could still read the evens and the odds. Well, I don't know. Guess I haven't thought this all the way through. Plus, as soon as the comic book store guy knew to kick my butt out on the corner. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Think about a better way. If I was hulking green or gray, I could just bust through that brick wall, take their comic books away. But then the little meat would deal with all the tanks and bombs and guns. Have you ever tried to read a series with all that going on? Guess I need to rethink this plan. How would I back and board my comics with such huge hands? Guess I already told ya. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. If I'm stark raving rich like a man of iron, I might not be surprised to find that I might actually have the heart cold to follow an entire storyline. But would I really even need to read upon all those escapades? I mean, who needs such distractions when your sister's such a babe? But the downside is such a beast. Being shot up in a fun bee in the Middle East with a gang sign throwing soldier. What a major spoiler. What a major spoiler. Yeah, yeah, yeah. What a major spoiler. Whoa, 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 whoa. What a major spoiler.
This podcast is copyright 2024 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.